Good evening. The old man here, 12/2/2024. What I'd like to talk about tonight is schools in the Trump administration. Trump, even in his first term, talked about radical changes in the school system. Now, I never heard him say too much about it. He just said he wanted to do something and do some radical changes. Doesn't seem as though he ever quite got that far. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I really didn't see anything out of it in the first term. However, this term, I think he's going to be on the ball. It seems like it's one of his, amongst many, but one of his primary objectives, and I'd like to see where that might go. The fact of the matter is, some of the things I have heard is that he wants to take school funding and not have the feds involved at all. In other words, it stays, it's going to go from your area, or let's say your county, to the state, and then back to the counties, divvied out accordingly to the counties across the state, especially Michigan. We got such diversity from southern Michigan. You've got a lot bigger cities and, more population, but typically more money concentration, let's say, more jobs. And then as you get further north, let's say north of 20 even, it starts to get thinner and thinner. And by the time you get to the UP, there isn't much, if any, industry at all, other than prison, airports, and casinos. There's not a lot more than that up there. So, I can see, being redistributed amongst the different counties. But with that being said, I'm sure that the state, although we all know state, it's still government. It's not as good as the private sector, but the state level is going to be, I would think, it's got the potential anyways to be far better than the federal level. The swamp in DC is obviously just too deep. I mean, we got plenty of swamp here in Lansing too, but in DC, it's just concentrated swamp there. And so any funds that get to DC, how much of it are you really getting back here to the state? That never has made sense to me. That the feds or states gave funding to the feds and then begged to get it back, and they had to kiss their ass and do things just right and keep a kid in school X amount of days, no matter how useless they were, to get their federal funding for that kid. That just never made any sense to me. I think that, per state, the funding should come from within the state and stay in the state. That shouldn't go anywhere else. And with that being said, local schools administration will have a lot more pull in the state than they would at the feds, and the feds, they wouldn't have any pull at all. At least they should have some pull here at the feds or in the state level. And then parents will have a lot more say in fact too in the matter as well. And parents were complaining about, unlike the last administration, the Biden administration, where they had the FBI and basically investigating parents that were complaining about the way schools were doing things, either bringing books that could be considered pornography, for Christ's sakes, to the libraries, or having drag show queens at the schools. That stuff's just insane. But that's what we were dealing with, and the parents basically had no say in it. And anytime they cried about it, and rightly so, cried or complained, however you want to say it, but every time they did, they got investigated by the FBI. But we all know the Biden administration weaponized the FBI against the citizens and any political adversaries of the Biden administration. So I think that's going to get a big overhaul too, and we can save that for another night. But getting back to the schools, I think that could be huge changes. We get that under our belts, and then maybe we can work on getting schools privatized. I don't know what that would look like at the end of the day. I'm sure, far smarter people on the subject than me, but there's no doubt if you want anything, no matter what job you're trying to get it done, if you want it to cost 4 times as much and get half back from your investment, just give it to the feds. But same could just about be said on a state level. However, I think in this case, you could pay double what it's worth and get half back. So, less expensive, but still a joke at the end of the day. But at least it's better. That's a step in the right direction. When I say privatize, you're thinking, well, how in the heck can we do that? Our private schools, heck, they're more expensive, not less expensive. Well, I think even those private schools, like we've got a Catholic school, Naval, here in this area, cost parents a couple $1,000s a year. Well, it did back in the day. It's probably a hell of a lot more than that, excuse me. It's probably $6,000 a year, I don't know, to put their kids through that school. But honestly, I don't think those kids were being put through all the crap your state local schools were subject them to, and I don't think they're going to put up with these ultra progressive teachers either. They're not going to let that happen. So that would be better. But at the end of the day, I think it can even get better than that. Why do we even need today with the internet? Why do we even need brick and mortar and physical teachers at all? Think of the money you could spend. Think of the millions of dollars on one high school that's spent every year. Just one high school. It might be, Arthur Hill and them schools were, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 years old. And, the heat bills had to be atrocious in some of them old schools. Now they're tearing them down and build new ones, but still, what did that brick and mortar store or that brick and mortar school cost, not to mention all those teachers? How about an idea of where we get some of the best, pay them very, very well, and have online courses? And it could be to the point where, parents got more involved. They say that kids didn't do that well during the pandemic. When they weren't going to school, they didn't do as well at home as they did before. Well, that's because it was a half-assed plan thrown together and no real thought process put into it. Today, if you get the best of the best teaching an online class, and let's say your kid is assigned certain credentials to be able to log into the classes, and at the end of the day, he or she's got to step up and get the job done, and then they're held accountable if they're not. I think you take even just the problem with drugs in school, that could be a lot different. Maybe in the future where, we get back to sound money, gold and silver. I don't want to get too far off track, but still we get back to gold and silver as real money instead of this fake fiat money that's manipulated from A to Z. Okay, maybe moms could start staying home again, and moms could provide the discipline that these teachers are maybe supposed to have provided, of which they don't. Nobody cares about your kids as much as you do. And wouldn't it be awesome if dad could go out there in a 40-hour job, not 60-hour, 80, 70, 80-hour job, but he goes out there in a 40-hour job and he comes home with pay enough to pay all the bills, pay all the groceries, all of that stuff. Still have a car or two, maybe just, like back in the 50s and 60s, they didn't have 2 cars in every yard. They had one car, I remember, my parents had 2 cars, but I remember a lot of families, Dad took the car to work. Mom had to wait till Dad got home to go do any running she had to do, or she did her running on the weekends. And in some cases, Mom took Dad to work, and she had the car to do things with. But at any rate, wouldn't that be awesome if we could get back to where Mom's at home with the kids, the person that cares a lot more for them than any teacher. I think a lot of these schools are run more as a puppy mill. They're looking for a handout or a payday at the end of the day, and they really don't care. Quick story, I had a buddy, we were in high school, and we were going through welding class, and I'd made a deal with my teacher if I could ace the paperwork week. We had a whole week in the classroom. I made a deal with him. If I could ace that on day one, if I could ace that test on day one, I'd get to go out and weld, and then everybody else is sitting in the classroom. And he said, "Deal, you ain't gonna ace it." I said, "All right, dude, whatever." And I aced it, and I got to go and weld, and everybody else was in the classroom. About 3 days in, he come out and he says, "Hey, your bud Jeff," he says, "man, he ain't gonna make it. He's he's not bad as a welder. He's okay. He's got a little bit of potential." He says, "But man, this classroom's really kicking his butt." And I says, "Well, why don't you just send him out here? Maybe him and I could have a little talk, and maybe I can help him, And it was mostly about math. There were some other things, being able to read drawings and things like that, but it was mostly about math, and it happened to be about fractions where Jeff was having the most problems. And Jeff come out of the classroom and he says, I says, "Hey Jeff, what's the problem? Teach says you're having problems with his fractions. What part of this doesn't make sense to you?" Now, mind you, we're both seniors, and he's had 3 semesters of math already as a senior. No, actually 4 semesters of math as a senior. And the first 3 semesters of math, he was failing. And in order to graduate, he had to pass that 3rd semester, and fractions was kicking his butt in school too, And I says, "So what part of fractions don't make any sense?" And he says, "Well, he says, I don't understand where, the denominator, like 1/4, 4 being the denominator, and 1/2, and 2 being the denominator, and the one with the 2 as a denominator is actually bigger than the one with the 4 as a denominator. How could that be?" He says, "It doesn't make sense. It's backwards." I says, "Well, let me show you." And I drew him 2 pies. And just on a piece of paper. Now, we're not even 5 minutes into this conversation, and I drew him 2 pies, and I quartered the 1 pie, and I split the other pie in half, and I said, "Well, this one's 1/2, and this one's 1/4. Here's 1/4. I says, "Now, which one of them pieces are bigger?" And he says, "Holy shit, you got to be kidding me." I said, "No, it's just that simple." I spent 5 minutes with that kid. He got back in there, and he passed the class. He got through it. Now, he muddled through it, mind you. It was very slim pickings, but he got through it. And he actually wound up also passing his math in high school, too. Our regular classes, he wound up passing the math portion and wound up graduating with the rest of us. And I'm not saying I'm the greatest person in the world. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying, though, is I spent 5 minutes with him. Any teacher along the way could have spent 5 minutes with him and said, "Hey, Jeff, what part of this fractions isn't making sense to you?" And in 5 minutes, I explained it to him, or broke it down for him, and he understood it, and he passed it. At least he had the basic knowledge to pass the class. And now, if somebody would have done that for him way back in the beginning, even way back into either middle school or your not kindergarten, but your middle school or your elementary school, obviously they've let him down from day one. Not one of them teachers cared enough to take 5 minutes. That's amazing to me. That has always blown me away, and I'll never forget that story. That happened to me Well, 1981, we were in welding class. 1981, that was my graduating year. Actually, the fall of '80 and the spring of '81 was my graduating year, and so that was a good number of years ago. To this day, I've always remembered that, and I've told that story quite often to other people as to how much, even back then, schools let kids down, and they just didn't really care. All they cared about was a paycheck. At least that's the way it seemed to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some cared and just didn't have the time because they had so many students. And again, that can be a problem too. The teacher's so burdened with so many kids that they can't do a good job of teaching anybody. You either get it or you don't. If you don't, you're kind of SOL. You're just left out in the wind because they just ain't got the time to help you. And that could have been the case too. I don't know. We did have, at least 25 kids in our class. In our welding class, we had a kind of small classroom, and that classroom was jammed full. So maybe that was it. I don't know. But for the most part, it seemed to me, at least back in the day, that there wasn't many of them that really cared. All through school, I only had a couple of teachers that really seemed to do their job well, really knew their job, or the subject they were teaching, they really knew it. It wasn't about the paycheck, it was about the kids learning the subject, and they put their heart and souls into that class. And it really showed that the kids were really engaged in the class. The other teacher were just regurgitating the same old shit, 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day, whatever it was, and they really didn't care. It's just like, get through this day, get to Friday and get my paycheck, and I'm out of here, and give me 25 or 30 years and get me a pension and get me out of here. That's all it seemed like they really cared about. But yeah, I think that done right, that online school stuff would really be great. And Trump had also spoke about the colleges, the same thing. Take some of the best of the best of the best, mind you, professors, and they're out there. And sometimes even what could be your best professors aren't in the system because they can make a lot more money. Instead of teaching, they're out in industry making money. And so, they never go to the teaching end, although they could, so maybe you can pull, some of those people from industry, pay them really well for a year or two, make some really good online programs. And again, instead of kids being, going to college and coming out of a 4-year college in debt, maybe they sign up to a program, and as long as you stick to it, and I'm never about free. That's not what it's all about. But I don't see let's say kids learning engineering, and how many years have we had math? We've had math and that's the biggest part of engineering is math, although there's other parts, but the most of it's math. And how many years have we had math? 1,500 years? I don't know. Beats the hell out of me. But why in the hell are you going to school to learn math and charging for it when it's been around and actually it should be free? Everybody should be taught math, but anybody that wants an engineering degree and take it to that next level, they ought to be able to sign up to some sort of a program through the state that's free and online. And as long as you stay with the program, you prove yourself, you do your good grades and all of that, stay with it and come out with an education that you can turn around and put into industry, and we all benefit, I'm not talking about free college like Bernie Sanders' free college, where you still got all your expenses. You're paying a teacher, an overpaid professor, and you got big colleges that just suck up energy and teach progressive bullshit. How about we have, like I say, online classes where you can learn from the best of the best and go from there. I think that's a great idea. Even Michael Saylor, the big Bitcoin guy, I've listened to him quite a bit, and he's an engineer, and he's a software engineer. but at any rate, engineered it nonetheless. And he's got a program where through his business, he's teaching online, free online classes for anybody that's got the grades and the stick to it enough, because he wants to, he needs to bring new people into his business all the time. And this way you're not breaking bad habits. You're teaching them just what you need, what they need to know, and concentrating on the good and throwing out the bad. You don't need to, on an engineering degree, you don't need the underwater basket weaving class, just to get a credit, of which is just ironic bullshit. So many college programs, you got to have all this fill-in bullshit that you're not only wasting time on, but you're wasting money on, and you're forced to do it just to get that degree. So, well, that's my feelings on the school system. I hope Trump, well, in fact, I know Trump's going to attack this pretty hard, probably, I don't know, within the first year. I don't see him letting this one go very long. He's seen how far downhill academics has gone. We can see it in the kids today. They're just not getting the education they used to get. And are they even getting a education at all? I got to wonder. So I'd really like to see him get it kicked off the ground and running hard. That'd be awesome. Thanks for coming tonight, guys. Appreciate it. If you would, like, subscribe, share, and please comment. Love reading the comments every morning, guys. Thanks. Have a great night. Bye.